Boneyard. Today we got mega talented Jared Adams from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Jared, anyone out there who may not know you, why don't you give us a little rundown of who you are?
Sure. Yeah, I consider myself an alt rocker from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Play mostly alt rock music. Put out my second album just this year. Been starting the solo project a couple years ago, and before that, played in a number of bands, and still playing a number of bands. Apparently, keep myself quite busy. It seems so. Anytime I can get a chance to play some music, I do. I get on stage when I can. So
Absolutely, yep. And I, for one, experienced my first Jared Adams show 2 weeks ago at the Tap House,
right on.
which was phenomenal. You're a performer, and that's the one big takeaway there was performer, and your jacket is second to none as well. So, so just kind of surfing through your stuff today. Mystic Humanism new album came out in March of this year, I believe. March.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. Yeah. Why don't you give us a little story about that? Where was it recorded? What's your writing process like?
Yeah, a lot of that album was sort of written over the course of like the pandemic when we sort of had a lot more time to, be at home and do nothing. So I had more time to write music. I also recorded a lot of it too then as well. Like I did recorded sort of part of at home and then sort of went into the studio later to lay down some other stuff like the drums and bass and stuff. But a lot of like the guitars and stuff were all sort of recorded in like the demoing phase of the tracks, but then they kind of ended up sort of making their way onto the final tracks as it was. And then went to Private Ear in December, October, November. I don't know, late 2022, something around there. I can't remember exactly when. And yeah, we laid down a lot of like the rhythm tracks there and some of the vocals and stuff and all that. And yeah, and worked with JP, who's absolutely phenomenal, and he mixed it and all that and mastered it. And I think it turned out sounding awesome. And then it put it out just this March. And it's kind of sort of, I call it like my hot takes on the world. So like every song is sort of like got its own theme or whatever, like politics or AI and the metaverse and stuff like that. That's kind of just sort of my views of the world, I guess, is kind of the takeaway from it.
Okay, yeah. First song I heard off it, I believe, was Inundated. Also believe you played that one 2 weeks ago. It sounded familiar when I listened to it the other day. Great album. I did take a little bit of a run through it today, and just phenomenal, great sound as well. So kudos to you and Private Ear on that one.
Thanks.
It's also just you mentioning just recording at home and doing stuff there. It's quite something how far it's gone, right? Where you can actually start doing that stuff in the in your own house.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think of something like you're doing like a little synthesizer part or whatever, like how much different is it going to be if I do it at home or at the studio, right? So it's going to be, might as well save myself some time and money and do it at home.
Yeah, exactly, right? You also had an album out in 2020?
Yeah, that was my first solo album. That was called Tragic Nostalgia. And actually, talking about me being a busy guy, I was actually playing this morning at the Down Vert Museum, which I don't know if you know what that is, but downtown there's like an old Victorian house and they have it all sort of done up like an old house still. And actually, that's where I'm actually even wearing the shirt right now. The album cover for Tragic Nostalgia, the photo was done there at the Down Vert Museum. And so I played that this morning, and I was like, well, I'm going to play the whole album front to back. So I played all of Tragic Nostalgia front to back this morning.
Oh, wow.
in like an acoustic sort of setting.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, like I said before we went live, you're a busy guy. You're always out kind of doing something, right? And you said you got a couple of bands. I know at one point you were. I'm not sure if you're still active with them. Color by Numbers.
Yeah, we're actually kind of everyone's sort of been pretty busy over the last few months for summer and whatnot. But we're actually playing, I think, the Toad this coming Saturday. Saturday. We've also been working on some recording too, but it's sort of been a slow process because everyone's just so busy in that band.
Yeah, same members as before.
Yeah, it's always been the same four guys.
Yeah.
Alex, Mike, and Jesse.
Yeah, excellent. Another band I was going to bring up solely because you have a show coming up Thursday, and we're playing the same stage this Thursday. Yeah. So it's it's great, and I've told the other band members of mine, there's Jared Adams, he's going to be up there, and let's see what he brings. And I told them about, the couple Thursdays ago, just a show you brought, and it was great. So Radio Riders is the band.
Mm-hmm.
So how long has that band been around for?
I started with them, I guess, just earlier this year, maybe like in March or April or something. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, it must have been around March or so. but I'd met Doug, like who sings in the band, Doug MacArthur. I don't know if you,
Mhm.
but he used to sing in the band Broken Halo like years ago. If you remember those guys. But he's singing Radio Riders, and I met him in the music scene like about a year or so ago, and he was talking about how he has a band and they're looking for another guitar player. I was like, well, I play guitar, so that's just kind of it. I just sort of walked in and joined the
band. For sure. How many shows have you guys played?
I think this Thursday is gonna be like our 4th show.
Oh, awesome!
3rd or 4th, I can't remember exactly. Yeah. So pretty new on the scene.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, excited to see it, and then there's another band there as well, Fox and Sound, I believe. Yeah. So what's the plan with you moving forward? Obviously, you just released an album, so I wouldn't put the pressure on you to release another one right away. But obviously, you're playing Thursday, you're playing Saturday. More events coming up. I know you're playing the Darling Bar as well.
Yeah, that's at the end of the month on the 27th. That's my solo project again, with the full band and everything. Yeah, I mean, I plan going forward as new music. I have a couple new songs I'm actually going to be playing at that show. So if anyone out there listening is interested in hearing some new music, come down to Darling Bar on September 27th. But yeah, I'm hoping to start doing some. As much as I like doing albums, it's a lot of work to go into the studio and record it all at once and very costly. So I'm thinking like going forward, maybe like doing some singles here or there and just sort of like kind of taking it a bit slower, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, makes sense, right? Anything else besides that coming up?
What else do we got coming up? I think that's it currently. Yeah, not much else in the works right now, but that's sort of the plan for the next like month at least.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure more will pop up. Yeah. So anyone watching, if you just go to Jared Adams, any of his social medias, obviously check out the online stuff, the music online, Mystic Humanism, great sounding album. I'm gonna probably be spinning it a few more times this week just to just a couple more listens. Yeah, but yeah, it was fantastic. Also, what you might find on Jared Adams is a gear review. You did a gear review. Is this something that you typically do?
Occasionally. It's sort of like I also work in video production, so I have like a fair amount of knowledge of that sort of thing, like shooting and editing and stuff. And so I have like a YouTube channel that I've been trying to kind of grow. So I've been sort of focusing on that time bit and kind of taking sort of a different, not necessarily a different route, but just doing another side of like sort of the whole music world and like kind of breaking down some gear that I bought recently and doing like videos for mods to my guitars and stuff like that. So it's kind of just something, anytime I have a new piece of gear, I kind of just make a video about it. It's not really any sort of scheduled, like I have to have something every 3 weeks or whatever, but it's just sort of something fun to do.
No, it's good. I watched I believe it was on a Fender amp, the one I watched.
Oh yeah, the Tone Master Deluxe.
Yeah. It's great. You see that stuff on YouTube and stuff, and you went pretty in depth with it, so it sounded good. I had something I was going to talk to you about, and I forget exactly what it was. But Winnipeg. Anyone who's kind of been tuning in with the Boneyard since I've helped out, it's a lot of Winnipeg bands. I got another band tonight from Sarasota, Florida, which will be kind of my debut outside of Winnipeg with the Boneyard, I think. But just Winnipeg bands. We talk about Color by Numbers, who everyone's heard of for a while now, right? There's a lot of good bands out there. I'm wearing my Royal shirt right now. Nice shirt. Winnipeg's got just such a great music scene, and it's really something that's been pushed. What's your take on Winnipeg? What are some bands out there that need to get some recognition? And
yeah, I mean, I love the music scene in Winnipeg. It's such a like there's so much variety and so much depth to it, and everyone's so like welcoming and awesome. Personally, I love like bands like the Haleys, Full Benefits. Who else? Jace Bodner is fantastic. I love watching him perform. There's a ton. Like there's so much music. It'd be hard to actually start. Like if I start listing, I'm just gonna keep going for like 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, exactly right. And you know what? It's not just the bands playing out there. Like you look at the Tap House, it's a great example of that place. Not only do they have music, they got karaoke, which I think Jace does at the Tap House.
Possibly.
Yeah, pretty sure it does. But there's something going on everywhere. There's some great venues out there. How about yourself growing up? When did you start playing?
Well, when I was really young, my parents tried to make me take piano lessons, and I didn't want it at the time. I kind of wish I'd stayed with it now, but I picked up guitar probably when I was about 15. I'd kind of gotten into like Our Lady Peace and sort of found some of the, like acoustic recordings. and I heard this one of like, you know, the song Clumsy that has like that piano intro. And so they had like an acoustic version on and it's played on the guitar. My dad had some guitars around the house. I picked one up. I'm like, oh, I'm sure I could like learn this and play this. So I kind of like found a tab and played the intro. I'm like, okay, this is pretty easy. And then you get to the first chord, and I'm like, how the heck am I supposed to play 6 strings at once?
Yeah.
That was my like learning how to play guitar experience.
And is Our Lady Peace just one of the like inspirations growing up as well? I know for me, it was one of my first concerts was actually on that Clumsy tour. I believe it was 1998 with Everclear.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they were a huge like inspiration for me in musically and whatnot. Like that's, you know, the reason I started playing guitar basically. So
yeah. What are some other bands that you looked up growing up?
Always was fascinated with David Bowie. I find him like, in terms of both his music and like as a performer, as I'm sure you know, you kind of maybe noticed when I was on stage, you know, like glamming up a bit.
Yeah,
definitely takes some inspiration from that. And like a lot of the classic rock bands and stuff too. And I also like a lot of newer bands too. I really like take inspiration from, like stuff like even like Royal Canoe, like some local new stuff where it's like they kind of push the boundaries on sort of like what new rock can be. Stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. What's your just speaking of new music, what's your take on the whole AI stance right now?
I mean, it's sort of like inevitable that AI is going to sort of start to permeate a lot more into society. I'm not a huge fan of this idea of like a lot of AI music that's like popping up on Spotify to gain streams and whatnot, but it's sort of it's probably unavoidable. I don't know. I find like it's a useful tool. Like I made a whole music video using AI to generate like the video portion of it, but it was all sort of like I filmed myself and then used the AI to stylize the video footage. So I think like it's a tool that like when used appropriately and properly like can be good, but there's a lot of stuff that's just popping up that's just kind of like AI garbage right now, like kind of, you know, filling your news feeds with photos that are just whatever utter crap, you know.
Yeah, exactly right. I thought it'd be a good question because I know you're very technical with obviously just things with music and everything. Once again, just seeing your live show, there's a lot going on. It's just not, you know, full band. It's not just you and a guitar and a bass and a drum, right? There's a lot going on, and just the world we're in right now. I heard a song the other day, and I think it was Motley Crue, and I just read comments and someone said that like 75% of it was AI generated, and it's just at the point where what's real now, right?
Yeah, and sort of like it's starting to get pretty good to the point where you can't tell sometimes if you're not like paying super close attention. You hear a snippet of a song, you think it's real, and it's like, wait a minute, no, that can't be real. It's weird sounding when you actually like listen closely to it.
Yeah, exactly right. How about you know, just and also speaking of new music versus old music, some bands that are kind of making a return. The big news this week was Linkin Park new vocalist, female vocalist, where you know it's a little controversial. I know it goes a little deep with some of her beliefs and everything, and people thinking
she's like a Scientology related or something like that.
Yeah, and she kind of sided with that Danny Masterson or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. So you know, with that, some of these bands coming back, and you know, for me, I just went into it with I'm not a big Linkin Park guy to begin with, but I went into it with this isn't a replacement for Chester. This is a rebirth of a band, and they redid their logo and everything. And you know, obviously 2 weeks ago the Oasis return, which we'll see if they make it to the shows.
That's they won't make it to like the first song probably.
No, exactly right. So what's, you know, how do you feel about bands coming back? And it's almost, I don't want to say a legacy act, but you know, they're kind of getting recognition, and you're seeing some award shows that are doing awards, and they're not really giving it to the new bands. They're kind of going like,
right.
There's one not long ago, and it was like U2's nominated. No shame towards any of these bands, but U2, Lenny Kravitz, and you know, there's just some bands that kind of are, you know, had their prime, and new music not getting recognized, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I kind of never really thought about it too much, but now you mentioned, I do kind of notice that there is sort of like a lot of times out there where it seems that you're right. A lot of these sort of legacy artists, the ones who still get a lot of the recognition and whatnot, and it must be harder. Like, I mean, I know for myself, it's hard as a musician trying to get your music out there. So I'm sure even if you are like a musician who has the backing of a team or whatever, or a record deal or whatever, it's probably still hard to sort of like penetrate into the new world of music now, especially with streaming, where it's like, you know, back like, you know, 20 years ago, you had radio and whatnot, even before streaming, like there's all radio. So like basically you weren't choosing what you listen to. You put on the radio and it's whatever the DJ picks, right? So it's a lot easier for these like bands to kind of get sort of, you get in good with the DJ and they'll put you on or something. But with Spotify now, it's sort of like, the algorithm will either feed you up something or you're just choosing what you want to listen to. So it's sort of harder to find new music if you're not like actively going out and searching for it, right? So I think it's kind of tough to make inroads into the music world now as a new artist.
Yeah, exactly right. I think just people I've talked to, especially in our Winnipeg scene here, there's a lot of people. You ask them what they're listening to, and it's all local bands. It's kind of different. It seems that I know for myself growing up, I didn't grow up in Winnipeg, but it was never about the local bands. The local bands were just the local bands that were doing something. But it just seems that now, and I've credited it many times on the show to the Live at the Roslyn.
Oh yeah.
And it just seemed when that happened, there was a bit of a changing of the guard, and you start seeing a lot more focus on the local bands, right? And not sure if you saw the one where I had Evan Chandler on from the Royals, and we talked about local bands and stuff, and why go to the, it's good to have the big shows, but why go to the MTS Center, spend $100 on a ticket, then $16 on a beer when you go to the Park Theater for $20 and buy a beer for $5, right?
Right. Yeah.
And and it's just, I say it again, there's just so many good bands coming out of Winnipeg, and there's always something going on. For myself, I live South Osborne, so any direction I go, I'm gonna run into live music. So yeah. So have you played the Park Theater before?
It's been a while. I haven't played it since they've done the renovations, but I did play it. Actually, that's kind of not true. I did like a live video there during the pandemic, but there's no audience. But it was like sort of, they were just midway through the renovations. But I have played the Park Theater before I would cover numbers.
Yeah, it's that new renovation's unmusical.
Winnipeg needed a space like that. Like after the loss of the Garrick, like the Garrick was kind of that sort of venue that had like for a few thousand or however much the capacity is, and when that shut down, there wasn't really a venue in that sort of like stage or that size.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, now that wall's knocked out of there, it really opens it up. So yeah, it's great there. Do you have any favorite venues to play in Winnipeg?
Some of my favorite venues are the ones that are already shut down, unfortunately. I always loved the Cavern. Like I loved playing there. I mean, the sound was never amazing because it's a tiny little hole in the basement, but like a lot of fun to play there. I do like playing Tap House. Tap House is a lot of fun. I find though that stage is kind of a little small, so you try to cram 4 or 5 people on there, and it's sort of like you're bumping elbows constantly and not much space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we mapped it out the other night to see what the best fit was, because this is honestly the first show that I'm going to say the first show we've ever played as a group coming up.
Right.
So yeah, after I saw you guys there and saw, you had limited space.
Yeah.
And I first thing I thought was, okay, how are we going to make this work? So, but we got it figured out now. So
yeah.
You mentioned COVID back there about playing the park with no audience there. What kept you busy through COVID? Obviously you were writing that, but how did the live scene work for you? Because it really shut everything down for quite some time there, and we lost some venues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did a few like live stream events and stuff. I did try to do like an album release show for Tragic Nostalgia. It was like in August of 2020. There's sort of some restrictions being lifted. Like I think some bars were open, like everything had to be seated. So I did do it at what was it called at the time? Was it called Happenings? It's basically where the Cavern was. Oh, the Underground. That's what it's called at the time. It's since again changed name, I think. But yeah, so I did a live show there. I think that was probably one of the few shows I did during COVID, just because it was hard to kind of get out and book shows and play venues and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure, right? And another venue there we lost, the Goodwill Social Club.
Yeah, actually, now I think about that, was always one of my favorite venues to play.
Yeah.
Like, it was a good, like, sort of small to medium-sized venue, and it actually had like a proper green room and a decent-sized stage. I wanted to do my album release for Mystic Humanism there, and then the week that I was going to go book it, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're shutting down." I'm like, "Great, cool." So I did it with my daughter, and I had 12 people on stage with me at one point. I'm like, "Okay, this is like fun, but it's really tight."
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no, it was the Goodwill was the first place I ever felt spoiled in the back.
Yeah, it was back there.
Yeah, for sure. Saw an announcement. Are you familiar with the Dust Rhinos at all?
Heard them, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They have their they always do the big sociable at the Park Theater and get other people up with them as well, right? So they play their own show, but bring up other people. How about yourself? I did talk to someone and they said they saw you play once and you had other people come up with you as well.
Yeah, I try to, it's fun to always bring on some guest artists. Like for my release show, since I did have some horn players on the album, I brought them on stage with me for a couple songs. String players as well for a couple of the quieter acoustic songs. And I had Christy Toronto from Paper Machete. She actually sang on my album, so she came and sang her part on the live performance of it as well. So I don't know, it's just always fun to kind of bring on other musicians and have different arrangements and different parts and stuff, as opposed to the standard sort of 5-piece rock band sound.
Yeah, for sure. And and it just broadens everything too, right? And yeah, I forget who told me that. Someone said they were at a show and you had horn players up there, and they said it was just this huge production, but they said that's Jared though. He'll get a big production going. So
yeah, that probably would have been the release show. It's the only time I've had those horn players. So
yeah, it must have been. I can't remember who said it. Someone said it. I actually think it was live on one of these shows too. They mentioned it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, no, it was good. So, yeah. So what else can you tell us? What we've always talked about what's coming up. What message do you have to your fans out there? You got a lot of fans, because let me just look here. You got some songs that have 10,000 plays on Spotify. Someone's out there. Someone's out there spinning you. Oh, that's so Thin Kid's song.
Yeah, that one's getting some plays. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's getting some plays. What was your writing process on that? I felt that song was a little different than the rest. There was something that stood out with that one.
Yeah, maybe so. The writing process for that, I think it was sort of like the idea came from like years and years and years ago. I lived in Osborne Village, and like on the weekends, all the kids from like the suburbs and the South End would like come up to Osborne Village, and they go to all the cool bars and whatnot and hang out and think that they're all cool as well, right? And we would always joke and call them like tourists, because they'd be here for a couple of days and go back home. Of course, the irony there is that I grew up in St. Vital myself, and I was basically one of them. The song's kind of about that, just sort of like coming up from the suburbs and going and hanging out at the cool areas of town. And I think like that one, I don't really remember what the writing process was for that one. It must have started on keys, because it does start with like that keyboard part of vocals. And I think that was one of those ones where I was like listening to a lot of Royal Canoe at the time, and so I was kind of going. That's why like there's a hand clap thing in there, and all like the shakers and stuff, and weird little parts. Like it was sort of inspired by that kind of indie alt rock sound.
Yeah, no, there was someone I listened to when I started listening to the album. I got to that one, and there was just something different about it. There was just I don't know, it just seemed more. I don't want to say more produced. I don't want to. I'm not a shot at you or anything. It just seemed more produced than anything.
Right.
But but it's a great song though.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, this Thursday, Tap House. Obviously, people of Winnipeg, if you're watching this, even if you don't live in Winnipeg, come in for this show. It's gonna be a great show. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. Obviously, play the stage there, and with Fox and Sound as well. It'd just be a great night, and be good to meet you in person. I was going to come talk to you a couple Thursdays ago, but you had a crowd of people, and you were helping the band. The last band that night, I saw you were talking to someone. I think someone was using some of your
gear. Yeah, he forgot his power supply for his synthesizer, so he's asked if like you could borrow my power supply, and it didn't work. So he's like, just borrow my microcord, just use my synthesizer. He didn't know what all the settings were. I was trying to help him from off the side of the stage, and I'm like, I don't really know what all the settings are either. I don't know.
There you go. Right. Awesome. Well, it's been great chatting with you. Obviously, like I said, looking forward to the show. Anyone looking to listen to something new, some days I get bored with everything I'm listening to, check out Jared Adams' music. It's high energy. Check him out on stage. It's charismatic. It's just great. And I hope you're wearing that jacket again, because it just stood out. It's amazing. So anything else you got before we wrap it up?
No, just thanks for everyone who's been tuning in and listening to music. I really appreciate it. It's always good to come and chat on shows like this and talk to people.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll see you Thursday night then.